Somewhere right now, a parent is holding a phone that never rings. Not because they have no one to call, but because the one person they want to hear from has forgotten they're still waiting. There's a father sitting on a worn-out sofa, his eyes fixed on a smartphone screen that refuses to light up. He isn't scrolling through news or watching videos. He is simply waiting. He's waiting for a notification, a vibration, or a brief hello that never seems to arrive. In his mind, he has 1,000 small things to share: a change in the weather, a story about a neighbor, a minor update on his health, but he hesitates. He tells himself his son is busy, that he shouldn't be a burden, and so he stays silent. This quiet, aching loneliness isn't an isolated incident. It is a silent epidemic unfolding in homes across the world. We need to have an honest conversation about a painful reality that many parents feel, but few dare to speak aloud: the slow, invisible process of children drifting away as they grow up. It isn't usually a sudden explosion of anger or a conscious decision to be cruel. Instead, it is a gradual thinning of the emotional threads that once bound a family together. To understand why this happens, we have to look past the surface level frustration and dive into the complex psychology of the human heart and the shifting nature of time. When a child is small, their parents are the sun around which their entire universe rotates. To a toddler, a parent is a hero, a teacher, a protector, and the ultimate source of truth. But as that child transitions into adulthood, the architecture of their brain begins to change. They develop a biological and psychological need for autonomy. In psychology, we call this identity growth. To become a person in their own right, a young adult feels a subconscious urge to separate, to stand on their own feet, and to prove they no longer need the safety net they once clung to. In this pursuit of independence, parents can accidentally become the opposition. Even when a mother or father offers advice out of pure love, the adult child might perceive it as control or a lack of trust. This creates a friction that leads to shorter phone calls, rarer visits, and conversations that stay safely on the surface. The child is busy building a new world, and in that world, the parents, who were once the main characters, slowly become supporting actors, then cameos, and sometimes, eventually, just background noise. Think about the perspective of a mother. She carries a library of memories that her child will never truly possess. She remembers the exact weight of them in her arms as a newborn, the sound of their first laugh, the panicked tears of their first fall, and the pride of their first day at school. For her, that child is still present in every version of themselves she has ever known. But for the adult child, those early years are a blur of half-remembered stories. This is what we call asymmetric memory. One side of the relationship carries a massive emotional weight that the other side simply cannot feel. This gap is widened by the sheer pace of modern life. A young brain is wired for speed, for the future, and for the next big milestone. It craves excitement and digital stimulation. An older brain, however, begins to value connection, reflection, and the preservation of memories. When these two worlds collide, there is a fundamental mismatch in expectations. To a busy professional in their 30s, a 10-minute phone call with a parent might feel like a task to be checked off a list. But to a retired parent whose world has shrunk, those 10 minutes might be the psychological highlight of their entire day. This is the emotional value gap. The same action holds vastly different weights for the two people involved. We also have to acknowledge the role of technology. We live in an era where we are more connected than ever, yet more emotionally distant. A child can interact with thousands of strangers online, seeking validation from likes and comments, while ignoring the one person who would give anything just to hear their voice. Talking to a parent requires a different kind of energy. It requires patience, emotional vulnerability, and a slowing down of the internal clock. In a world trained for fast, the slow love of a parent can feel exhausting. However, we must also look at the darker corners of this distance. Sometimes the silence isn't just about being busy, it's about self-protection. Not every childhood is a sanctuary. Many children grow up with parents who were overly strict, emotionally unavailable, or prone to outbursts. As adults, these children carry emotional memories of that pain. They don't necessarily hate their parents, but they maintain distance as a way to keep their inner peace. They avoid the phone call because they fear the judgment or the criticism that used to follow. If you are a child who feels this way, it is important to remember that your parents were also children once. They were raising you without a manual, often struggling with their own unhealed traumas, financial fears, and lack of guidance. Most of the mistakes they made weren't born of cruelty, but of ignorance and survival. Forgiveness isn't about saying what they did was right. It's about realizing that holding on to the distance only ensures that the cycle of loneliness continues. One of the most profound differences between parents and children is their perception of time. When you are young, you feel like you have an infinite supply of tomorrows. You think you can call next week, visit next month, or say, I love you at the next holiday. But for a parent, time has a different rhythm. They see the sunset of their lives approaching. They feel the loss of their friends, the decline of their physical strength, and the narrowing of their social circles. To them, tomorrow is a fragile promise, not a guarantee. When a parent repeats the same story for the 10th time, or asks a silly question about your lunch, they aren't trying to annoy you. They are trying to hold on to the moment. They are trying to stretch out the time they have left with you. Repetition is a form of comfort for an aging mind. It is a way of saying, I am still here, and I still want to be part of your life. The tragedy of this distance is that it often leads to what psychologists call time perception shock. This is the moment a child suddenly realizes their parents have become truly old. It often happens during a visit after a long absence. You notice the way they walk a little slower, the way their hands shake, or the way they struggle to remember a common word. In that moment, the unlimited time illusion shatters, and it is replaced by a crushing weight of regret. People often say, I wish I had called more. I wish I had listened more. But regret is a ghost that cannot change the past. This is why we must act now while the phone can still be answered. We don't need to move back home or change our entire lives, but we do need to reevaluate the 5-minute rule. 5 minutes of genuine, undistracted presence can be a lifeline. 5 minutes of listening to a story you've heard before without checking your watch or your notifications can provide enough emotional fuel to sustain a lonely heart for a week. If you are a parent listening to this, please know that your child's distance is often not a reflection of their love for you. They are likely lost in the fog of their own ambitions, their own stresses, and their own immaturity. They may not yet understand the value of what they are drifting away from. It isn't necessarily rejection, it is often just a lack of perspective. And if you are a child, I want you to look at your phone right now. Think about the person who was waiting for your name to appear on that screen. They don't want your money, your success, or your status. They want your voice. They want to know that in your big, busy, fast-paced world, they still matter. They want to know that the hero they raised hasn't forgotten the people who gave them their first cape. Human connection is the most powerful medicine we have for the pains of aging and the stresses of living. It lowers blood pressure, reduces depression, and gives life a sense of meaning. But it requires an intentional choice. It requires us to bridge the gap between the fast world of the young and the slow world of the old. The relationship between a parent and a child is a bridge built over decades. It is made of thousands of small bricks, conversations, arguments, sacrifices, and celebrations. When we stop communicating, we stop maintaining that bridge. Slowly, the bricks begin to crumble until the gap feels too wide to cross. But it is never too late to lay a new brick. It is never too late to pick up the phone and say, "I was thinking about you." Let this be a reminder that time is the only currency we can never earn back. We spend it so freely on work, on strangers, and on digital distractions, while the people who shaped our very existence wait in the shadows of our busy schedules. Don't wait for a milestone or a health scare to bridge the distance. Break the silence today. Ask a question and really listen to the answer. Let them repeat the story. Let them feel seen. Because one day, the phone will stop ringing, the sofa will be empty, and the only thing left will be the memories of the time we chose to give, or the time we chose to withhold. The psychology of why children ignore their parents is complex, but the solution is incredibly simple. It is the decision to be present. It is the realization that 5 minutes of your time is worth a lifetime of peace for them. Before you move on to the next thing in your day, I want you to ask yourself one question. When was the last time you really talked to them? Not a rushed update, not a text message, but a real conversation where you weren't looking at the clock. If it's been too long, let today be the day that changes. Reach out, listen, connect, because in the end, the love we give is the only thing that truly stays with us. I am just sharing my thoughts. Messy, emotional, real. And I want to ask you something before I go. When was the last time you really talked to your parents or your children without rushing? Tell me in the comments.